the indifference of a few and the resolve of some to build a more perfect union. While some play ostrich politics, burying their heads in the sand and shying away from admitting that there is a problem that needs to be solved, another quote from President Kennedy comes in handy at this point. Quote, "Those who do nothing are inviting shame as well as violence. Those who act boldly are recognizing right as well as reality." End of the quote. And that reality, we may want to say, requires that we face challenges when they come up and embrace problems with resolve. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, in the past 10 days or so, has done just that, condemning the xenophobic violence that occurred under his watch, apologizing for the wrong done to fellow Africans, and sending out emissaries or envoys to meet with and express regrets to foreign leaders for what happened. The word xenophobia was first used in 1877. Through time, it has been used variously and in varying degrees, meaning virtually the same thing. To the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, xenophobia is understood as, quote, "an attitudinal orientation of hostility against non-natives in a given population," end of quote. UNESCO further references sociobiologists who consider xenophobia to be a universal phenomenon, while social scientists describe it as, quote, "one among several possible forms of reactions generated by anomic situations in societies of modern states," end of quote. Xenophobic behavior is thus based on existing racist, ethnic, religious, cultural, or national prejudices, and can be defined as the attitudes, prejudices, and behavior that reject, exclude, and often vilify persons based on the perception that they are outsiders or foreigners to the community, to the society, or to the national identity, end of the quote. And stretching this some more, UNESCO concludes that, quote, "whereas racism usually entails distinction based on physical characteristic differences, such as skin color, hair style, facial features, etc., xenophobia implies behavior based on the idea that the other is foreign to or originates from outside the community or nation," end of quote. And no matter how it is defined, and no matter whether it has anything to do with race, suffice it to say here that many today blame what is happening in many African countries on new migration patterns, globalization, and the inability of several countries to create jobs or make living conditions conducive for their young, vocal, and restive populations. The provision of social services, jobs, and other opportunities compounded by corruption, the long years in power by some leaders, and the age gap between such leaders and their youth population, that is, have aggravated rather than improved conditions. On the other hand, populations in receiving countries see arriving foreigners as a threat to the few opportunities in their homelands. One can therefore say that the growing numbers of job seekers and the dwindling size of the national cake is reason enough to cause the young, vocal, and restive youth that we referred to earlier to take to the streets rather than listen to the inner voices of reason and restraint that they possess. Education, Pan-Africanist education, that is, might be the beginning of a solution, because it is when the youth understand that immigrants are not just consumers or takers, but also producers and givers, will they calm down, think twice before descending the streets. A February 2012 article I came across says that, or rather concludes that, stopping xenophobia and racism require the promotion of a more tolerant, loving society. And doing so would require teaching our youths, our kids better, and speaking those truths and value systems to them as regularly as possible. This is so because we have the power to shape thoughts and ideas in our youth in an understanding, respectful way. So, shall we speak to our youth and school them to understand the value of treating the other person as they would want to be treated? Well, I've had my say. let us open the gate and let us see who is there to tell us more about black-on-black violence, xenophobia, or Afrophobia. What is it? Over to you, please. Is Divine still with us, or Reverend Pam? Over to you.
Yeah, but we have Dr. Is that Dr. G? It's showing up as Dr. G. You are very welcome. Please, could you take a minute to introduce yourself?
Hi, ma'am. Good evening. Evening where I'm Gabila Nobong. I'm a political economist at the School of Economics in the Northwest University in a little town called Potchefstroom in South Africa. Okay. But Divine is like an uncle, a father, and a big brother to me, and invited me to join your conversation, and I'm more than happy to be part of this platform and just to bring in some perspective. Hopefully, that would throw some more light from an insider's view of someone who has lived in South Africa as a foreigner for almost 15 years and seen the society evolve.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Gabila. We are very grateful that you answered that call and that you are present here today. Have in South Africa for more than 15 years, and that, of course, overlives or outlived the xenophobic violence that has happened in that country. What has your experience like living there as a foreigner?
I should say that what is happening here should be seen in a very comprehensive manner and very, what should I say? In a very, it is much more complex than sometimes gets presented out there. When I first came to South Africa in about 2003, I experienced for the first time the reality of a developed society that has underdeveloped realities and the implication that has for the people who are living here. So South Africa is a post-conflict traumatized society with very many socioeconomic challenges. It has levels of poverty, one of the highest levels of inequalities in the world. That is the disparity between rich and poor. It has levels of unemployment that are one of the highest on the continent. It has unofficial figures have consistently for the last almost 10, 15, 20 years been at almost 27 to 30%. And this is even with very measured, carefully doctored calculation methods. Unofficial statistics places at 40%. But the 40% is just the calculation of the working population. So South Africa has a population of about 50 million people. Those who are working age and eligible to work, about my statistics may fail me, about 13 million. So there are about 37 million of the total population that currently are either not part of the workforce. So not being part of the workforce comes from a variety of combinations, either be those who are young, the 0 to 21, or those above 60, the old, and those who are on pensions. And it could be those who have never taken any active steps to secure employment. So when we talk about almost a 30% unemployment rate, it is 30% of the 13 million, which will be your labor force. Which means if you want to look at it from the perspective of, if you take the informal economy and you take it into consideration, those who are actually not being considered, then you will have a situation where the actual effective number of economically active participants contributing to the growth of the economy in absolute number terms is about 20% of the population. The remaining 80% more or less sort of are dependent on social grants of various kinds. So that is just to paint a picture of the kind of society that we are talking about. Now that practically means the resources that it is a very rich country. That there's no doubt in that. But just the availability of wealth and money doesn't carry it. When you have that large amount of people who are dependent on the benevolence of the state or on the social security system or social safety net of the state, it places pressure on resources. Health facilities are not sufficient. Were not initially created to cater for the Black segment of the population. So with the advent of democracy, it's just been 25 years, there has been a large influx of locals to facilities that they were not previously privy to access, which has placed these facilities under enormous pressure. I'm thinking about public hospitals, for example. So that is the context, and the levels of poverty that they do have here and inequality is unlike is experienced in most of Africa. When we talk about poverty and inequality, it's not just in absolute terms, but in relative terms. And if you drive through huge major South African cities, you are going to be confronted by that reality. Sandton is described as the richest square mile on the African continent. It has the best in terms of business enterprises that you would have on the continent. It's the most modern. It has a fast speed train that links the airport to Sandton. It receives the highest number of international conferences, big business, your Ernst & Young's, your Alexander Forbes, anything that you can dream of that exists in New York sits in Sandton. But right next to Sandton, you have a suburb called Alexandra, which is an LOB, which is in squalor. So the high-rising skyscrapers of Sandton sit on one side, and in some spaces, literally across the road, you have abject poverty coexisting with each other. And it has a way of heightening the deprived sense of their deprivation, which then gets them to feel frustrated and gets them to feel not to sense that they are yet benefiting from the promises of post-apartheid dispensation. So that is a kind of a socioeconomic picture and contextual reality against which South Africa as a country needs to be interpreted. Now, coming into that picture is a mix of African migrants. Now, African migrants share the unique characteristics of, and you would know as a migrant, that migration from an African perspective is, by some law of selection, not reserved for the most vulnerable, which is another way to say that in more often than not, we export our best and our brightest. Either people who are extremely business savvy and have developed the courage to go and try their trade overseas, or people who are extremely educated, have acquired qualifications at home and want to go and further their studies, or people who just have resources to be able to migrate. Now, so the crop of people, in a sense, that gets pushed into this society, this very troubled society, it's a crop of people who, when they get here, from a street perspective, are street smart. From an educational perspective, if you go into the universities and higher institutions here, our top-notch professors and doctors and senior lecturers are majority, African migrants. If you go even look at our postgraduate study programs, master's and PhD, the bulk of our PhD students and our master's students are African migrants. So there's a sense in which that reality, which is an involuntary outcome of the nature of the migration we're dealing with, creates an impression of an invasion. It creates an impression of an invasion. They get a feeling that all of a sudden all of Africa is in South Africa, competing with them with their resources that are already scarce. And unfortunately, there has not been the leadership, political leadership, to be able to articulate, to help the locals to deal with this, Now, for example, I gave a training to government officials, the Department of Trade and Industry, and I think this gentleman, this is director in one of the departments, probably did not relate to the fact that I was a migrant, and then he brought up the question of this foreigners taking our jobs and invading our streets, and how he feels that it's important that we look for ways to just chase these people out there. So it's a situation that preoccupies even very senior echelons in government. It is a perspective that, and it's an aspect which I present to the rest of the world with a lot of caution, to say that notwithstanding the political response that President Cyril has given to the last incident, in the mindset, in the psyche, not just in the psyche, in the backdoor discussions of senior level government officials, there is a preoccupation with the African invasion, for lack of a better word. And there are lots of unofficial positions, unofficial policy stance undertaken to try and address the situation, to try and stem, to try and reverse this migration. Where I spoke with the Home Affairs officials a couple of years ago when I traveled back to Cameroon to try and facilitate a visa process for one of my young people who wanted to travel here. And because we were friends, this person essentially told me, listen, we have had security briefings within our departments where we have been instructed to make it difficult for Africans to come to our universities because the government is concerned that they are invading and have occupied the whole university system. So this is now given to consular sections in South African embassies around the African continent to say, make it difficult for these people to come here as an express political instruction. And then people who have legitimate documents go to the embassy. They provide everything that's required for the requirements for the visa. And then the embassy proves difficult, just makes it difficult for real people to migrate and control the flow. And because of, like you said in your editorial, the challenges that people are confronted in their respective countries, they resort to other means to come into the country, and they just make their way here. So the system is overwhelmed. They feel overwhelmed by the sheer number of Africans that are here and that they have to deal with on a daily basis. They have not had a constructive conversation on how to handle that, how to pursue sensible migration, how to send incentives to attract the right kind of people and maintain some kind of, ensure that the people who are coming bring about a positive contribution to the society. Because they have managed this thing.
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Right. So because I just wanted to just wrap up, bring a kind of a conclusion on that line of thought. Their approach has been to tighten the system, but they have tried to tighten the system without sufficient enforceability. So while they politically talk tough, all it has done is it has just increased the level of corruption at the level of the Home Affairs and the Home Affairs officials. Because as long as they make it difficult for people to follow official channels to migrate to the country, they just increase the price tag on official channels, and people out of desperation are willing to pay to get there. Now, because they also do not have a constructive policy on how to harness these skills that come into the country, they make it extremely difficult for African migrants to have jobs. And as it happens with every country, but I think I've been to the US, it's much less the case than is here. Here in South Africa, you can graduate out of the university, get all the degrees that you want, but it's still not obvious that you are going to be interviewed and given a job, even if you have a work permit, even if you have a residency permit. So they're fighting the presence of African migrants in different ways by giving express political instructions to companies not to hire foreigners, irrespective of their status in the country. So it's not an issue. It's not, even though the narrative that goes out there tries to paint a picture of the question of illegal migration, that's not the question. The question is they're overwhelmed by all forms of migration. That has resulted in two things. Because you've made it difficult for there to be a constructive, value-adding, direct engagement, a lot of people, it has pushed a lot of the migrants into the business sector. So if nobody's going to give you a job, you want to open a business. You want to be able to survive. You have a family to feed. So there is now a heightened sense of presence of African migrants in the trading sector, in the retail sectors, in the retail space. And because these people are extremely business savvy, They come and they invade these spaces and occupy the spaces. So there are some instances of xenophobia or Afrophobia that is instigated by the South African business community, reacting to the fact that on a one-on-one fair level playing field basis, they're not able to compete with these businesses. So they would instigate their people against these businesses as a means of trying to get them to clear the space so that they can come back and occupy it. Now, in the recent outbreak that we just had, there's a sense in which if you were following the news, you would realize that this particular outbreak started with a police invasion of certain segments of downtown Johannesburg that have predominantly foreign stores. Now, it could be, I mean, it's an allegation that in the current instance, it was a combination of this business and political leaders, particularly the mayor of Johannesburg, that are driving this agenda of ridding the inner city of the presence of foreign businesses. So it is politically motivated, and I'll come back to that if it's a question that you will have in that direction. And it is business motivated. So that speaks to the reality within the retail sector. There is, however, I should mention a second element, a second criminal element, which is extremely well-founded, which is the whole notion of the fact that certain immigrant communities are reputed to run drug syndicates and prostitution rings and so on and so forth. And communities have found themselves powerless in the face of this reality, because they can clearly identify the places where these drugs are being sold. They have often reported this to the police, but being good West Africans or Africans that we are, this colleagues of ours or these comrades of ours tend to forge very corrupt relationships with the local police officers to the extent that the community feels powerless to address the question of drugs. And at the end of the day, their children of school-going age, in some instances, fall victims to this reality. So it then paints a very mixed picture of what is the source of the Afrophobia that is currently happening in South Africa. There are very legitimate, genuine concerns around certain segments of the society and the extent to which the presence of migrants is heightening crime. There are competition-related concerns within the retail sector of how well these African migrants are taking over certain spaces. And there are increasingly political elements, and this is the one which I'm going to speak with a bit of caution, because that would mean reading the political, the fallout of the post-Zuma era, and a segment within the ruling alliance wanting to make President Cyril's life difficult, by creating chaos and creating a perception of a country that is out of order. So I don't know, that kind of briefly gives an idea of what I perceive as it's the real reality of what's going on here. And of course, I believe that leadership and the absence of leadership is also to be blamed. And I also think that a different conversation needs to be promoted as far as addressing this particular issue.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gabila, for coming on and being so elaborate on what the situation is like in South Africa. We will come back to you in a moment, but I think there's somebody else who has just joined. Please, if you joined, introduce yourself and take the conversation from where you feel comfortable. Hello, is there somebody on the line? Somebody with a Galaxy S8?
I think that's Bad Divine.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you for that. Anyway, Dr. Gabila, you've painted such a picture of the situation in South Africa. And I begin to wonder, I thought that it was because people were coming and taking the social services or social welfare services that the state offers to immigrants. That is causing trouble. I did not know that when I come and set up my business, you will still feel bad about me because I've started a business. If I can't start a business, if I can't provide a job to another person like me, in South Africa, then what am I doing? If I start a business, why come after me? If I'm not benefiting from social welfare, why come after me? That is the question that comes quickly to mind. I know that
that's an aspect of it.
Yeah, I know that just a minute. I know that the pre-democratic change era was full of that discrimination against the black person. But then I'm black, you are black, I have a business. Why are you jealous of me? If you cannot start it and I've started, is it not helping our community to grow?
I should add that the rest of Africa and the rest of the world needs to know that there are a lot of South Africans who benefit from the presence of these foreign businesses who are not complaining. There are a lot of South Africans who get employed by these foreign businesses that benefit from it. When I had this training in the Department of Trade and Industry, I told the directors in the ministry that you guys need to change the conversation. You need to stop seeing foreign businesses in the country as a threat and see them as an opportunity. You're a country of 50 million people on a continent of 1 billion people. There is no better ambassador. There's nobody who can make you to better understand the business opportunities on the continent than the African migrants that come from those countries that you want to go to. Nigeria is a country of almost 200 million people. There is no better person to take you and let you do and settle business in Nigeria than a Nigerian who has lived in South Africa, because he knows his people better. So I think that it is a narrative that it's a conversation that needs to change. And I think this is why I place responsibility clearly on the political leadership. They need to take the lead to present to the people that the presence of African migrants in this place is an opportunity. There's a reason why those businesses establish, succeed, and strive. There's an underlying business model. Regulation will fix this. You as the national government, all you need to do is make a law that says that every migrant that's going to set up a business, you are obliged to recruit 5 South Africans and to pay them X amount of money. Your business is going to stay open for as long as you have X number of South Africans recruited. You would solve the unemployment problem that's sitting at almost 40%. You would ultimately get your people to go and understand the business model that is causing Somalians and Ethiopians and all these different African migrants to prosper. And you would ultimately then position yourself to go and be able to do businesses with this country. I think it's a question from that particular aspect. It's a question of vision and a question of leadership. Because come to think of it, the people in the places where these people operate businesses are places that are not even frequented by this senior business officials. They set up businesses to cater for the lower class, for the most affected segments of the South African population. And these people are providing a service. They're providing a service that established commercial centers like malls, as you would have in the US, are not providing to these people. It's a need. Now, why would the beneficiary, the population benefiting from these services not see it as a need or as meeting a need? I think it's because the conversation has not been driven from political leadership. They are pandering to the desires of the people. They have not changed the conversation, because I think fundamentally in their side, they still have this issue of let us not allow these people to come and overtake and overrun us. So I think it's lack of vision, lack of leadership.
Yeah, without cutting you on that, without encouraging other cultural groups or races to be targeted, what happens to the person who is not dark-skinned? We are talking about black on black violence, but what about the other cultural, social, and tribal groups, or what is it, racial groups in South Africa?
Investors. Those are investors. They're tourists and they're investors. They're investors. They bring lots of money and lots of skills into the country. So they are investors, you know. Even if they're not as educated as some of us or do not have the kind of skills that we have. So I think it's a very valid point you're making. I think this is black on black hate, which goes to the depth of our psyche. You know, it's something that we need to address as a people and as a race, because you have instances in which, for example, I give you a classical example. University of Cape Town students can go on strike in Cape Town, for example, right? And they get to a space where police comes to disperse the crowd. Now you're going to find police telling white students and female students to step aside, guys, get out of the way. You shouldn't be doing this. Like having a civilized conversation with them. When the same black police meet black students, it's water cannons, it's sticks.
Slavery mentality. Slavery mentality. That's what
it's a mentality. Yeah, it's a mentality.
Unfortunately so. Now, tell me, let us go to the other aspect. I know it's still looking about race and so on. We have particularly people from Southeast Asia who have invaded a lot of African countries. They even go as far as roasting corn on the street corner, or making soya on the street corner. Does it happen in South Africa too? If so, are they also a target of this violence?
We do have lots of, what is very interesting and also very funny. You see, the invasion of downtown Joburg I spoke about a couple of weeks ago. These African migrants are selling products that are imported in South Africa by Chinese, by Asians.
Yeah.
And so these Asians set themselves up in Chinatowns, China City, as wholesale suppliers. And then the African migrants come and buy from them and take to other parts of town as retailers. And there are other segments of the society of various cities where those Asians are set up as retailers as well. But no, the short answer is no. They are hardly a target. They are hardly a target for two reasons. Number one, from the point of view of where their businesses are located, they do not go far deep into most African Black South African settlements as some of our own African migrant brothers would do. And then also in terms of the size and operation of their business, a little bit larger wholesale. So they do not feel, they're not a threat. They're not perceived as immediate threats to the South African person.
Now, when this thing happened 2 weeks ago or so, President Ramaphosa went out of his way, maybe I should say, to apologize to the world, especially to Nigeria and I think Zimbabwe and those African countries whose citizens were killed. He even sent emissaries to the countries, including Nigeria, where they went to explain what was going on. Now, if the president is starting such a conversation, what is wrong with the ministers and other members of the political class in South Africa engaging in such a debate as would clarify the position of South Africa vis-a-vis migrants?
It's the other part of the conversation that I said that I want to put out there with a lot of caution. The ruling party, as it currently is in South African context, is very divided. The fight to get President Jacob Zuma out of power was a very fierce fight that has led or has left the ANC to be in a very fragile position. So there are segments and there are fractions within the ANC and the ruling alliance that still pander and have allegiances to various segments, to various poles of power between Zuma and President Ramaphosa. And so Ramaphosa's election was a negotiated outcome of the ANC's elective conference. Essentially, it was carefully orchestrated because in Zuma's mind, he had been preparing his wife, the former chairperson of the AU, Dlamini Zuma, to replace his replacement over that, to be his replacement after him. But the ANC, part of people who came from Mbeki's era, who had not forgiven Zuma for firing Mbeki before his term, part of people who had been left out in the course of the the Zuma administration, and part of Cyril's own group eventually emerged as the winning group. But they struck a compromise where they essentially split the party 50-50, gave top-level positions to the Zuma faction, top-level promotion, and then Cyril Ramaphosa's faction. So Cyril is not leading a politically consistent government, united government. And President Jacob Zuma is still in so many ways pulling certain strings from the background. This most recent violence was not, contrary to what the world thinks, was not an outburst, overflow of emotions. There is a civil society organization group that mobilized people, sent out information tracks, set a date, identified specific targets, and released youths to go on the rampage. Previous instances have been spontaneous communities responding to specific issue. You know, a child comes and breaks into a foreign owner's shop to steal and then gets shot, and then the society gets angry in the process and says, "You foreigner, how can you shoot our child even if he was stealing?" Those are spontaneous outbursts. But the last one was well organized. We received the messages well ahead of time. They gave the date, they gave the time, they gave the places, and when that process started, when the violence broke out, some of these civil society leaders were on TV, trying to articulate the ideology and the argument behind what they were doing. So it was politically motivated. Just to come back to answer your question, to say that political leadership, the mayor of the city of Johannesburg is not from the ANC, it's not from Cyril Ramaphosa's party. There are segments within Cyril's own administration that are not totally behind him, as it were. So the government has not been able to come out. They have been more on a firefighting mode. They have been more on this thing is costing us too much. And as African migrants based in South Africa, we want to thank all of you, the rest of you in the rest of the world, for how much you react every time this thing comes out, because that has been our salvation. That has been the thing that has preserved us year in, year out, particularly Nigeria, because it is the only thing that brings sanity within the combination of the business and the political class in South Africa. When there is a conversation that comes from outside of the continent that tells them how much they stand to lose, then they pick up the phone and call their brothers and tell them that what you guys are doing, you need to stop it. You know, you cannot continue like that because it is costing us. It's costing us in terms of what we're using in business on the rest of the world. So it's an activism that maybe you guys do not realize how much that means to those of us who are here. But every time this happens, and there is that outcry from the rest of the world, and countries like Nigeria stand up and say this cannot proceed, that is what gets political leadership to respond swiftly because if you look at the way it stopped, it's as if somebody goes and switches off the tap. Now, if this is, and this is a country that has a culture of activism and protest, if this was homegrown outburst of anger, it does not take one speech or two speeches for the thing to die down.
That's right.
But because it is well organized, well orchestrated, the intelligence service knows that if I call A and call B and call C, I'm speaking to the leaders of the movement. And I will just tell them that, listen, MTN is losing X amount. Every day you continue this. This other business are losing X amount. So whatever it is that is your motivation, you need to stop. And then it stops. It stops like this. And then you ask yourself the question, was this a spontaneous outburst of anger, or was there a hand behind this? You know, and from everything that we're seeing, it would seem that there actually is a hand behind what has been happening, especially the last recent outburst.
Okay, Dr. Gabila, we would like to take a sip of water because we've been talking for a while. I think Dr. Ogoji, one of our regulars, is on the line. Dr. Ogoji, if you are with us, please, what is your take on black violence, or is it just Afrophobia?
Well, black on black violence has been going on for ages. It continues to happen. It's unfortunate. I don't know why we do it. South Africa, by the way, even in this part of the world where we live, our fellow black Africans, African Americans don't like immigrant blacks. Black Americans or Black Americans don't like immigrant blacks. They will tell you time and again. you come and take our jobs. But of course, it's the rule of, there is some element of the law that protect immigrants so that they cannot just start and destroy things. So it's quite unfortunate because if we immigrants feel more welcome in a white man's country than fellow African country, it's a shame. It's a shame. It's a shame because we should talk about African unity, African power, refine Africa. It should start by day-to-day living. And to be honest with you, why I scream and say, oh, South Africa do this, they do this, they do this, I still go and look down within Nigeria itself, you know. The Muslims are killing the Christians every day. You know, the Hausa man will kill the Igbo man will kill, and vice versa. In fact, you've surprised you that, I mean, this may not be news. In 2016, the then governor of Lagos, either 15 or 16, Tinubu, who is the leader of the party that's ruling Nigeria now, took some beggars from Lagos that are of Igbo heritage. Tinubu took some beggars, Nigerian beggars in Lagos that are of Igbo heritage, Eastern Nigeria, put them in a luxury bus and dropped them at Niger Head Bridge, deportation within Nigeria.
Oh my God.
That they're cleaning up Lagos from beggars. Excuse me? These are Nigerians. They should be free to live any part of the world. Then the argument holds now when the president of Buhari announced what to call Ruga settlement. Ruga is because of the frequent clash between the Muslim, the Fulani herdsmen and the farmers. The government is trying to build a settlement in each of the states of Nigeria. Take out an area of land, build school, build hospital, build mosques, so that the Muslim Fulani can settle there and raise their cow within the area. They are pretending that when they do that, it's going to become like a cattle colonies where everything a cow needs will be there. You know, then of course the people from the east and south kick against it that this will bring our enemies within us. Then when the fight starts, they will kill us all because they will be within us. And the same house of also know this, they are free, they are Nigerians, they are free to live any part of the country. Yes, but the federal government should not bring money to give you to support your business. Cattle is a private property, is a personal business. So this is an argument to and fro. Recently, the governor of Eastern Nigeria said, no more cattle ruling on the streets. We want cattle to live in northern Nigeria on truckload to the cattle market. Some people from North say, no, we don't want that to happen because we are Nigerians, we are free to roam around everywhere. So, in a motion, we're trying to kill South Africa, you know. When I think about what happened back home in Nigeria, I laugh because it's happening within our country. And we don't make any noise about it. So, black on black is a real disaster. I don't know what's wrong with the gene of black man. Tribalism, localization, and all, I mean, don't be surprised now in Cameroon if you separate Northwest into two different provinces now, they will start fighting one another. Now the whole Northwest is one country, you know what I mean? It's one state. You separate the two states now, they will start fighting one another. It's unfortunate. We need to grow.
Really unfortunate. We need to grow. And I think, Dr. Ogoji, thank you again. Don't go away yet. I think Reverend Pam is trying something new today. She's streaming it somehow. And I will want to go to her now in Houston, Texas. I hope the bad weather there has not affected you. But I know you have a question for Dr. Gabila, our first guest. So please, Reverend Pam, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, actually, it's not raining today. Hopefully, it won't rain anymore. And the flood has receded, you know. But I have a question for Dr. Gabila and also for Dr. Ogoji. A couple of things. But before I even said, I know we're coming up to the top of the hour. So, well, we have 9 minutes. Yes, I am streaming on Facebook Live. This is the first time I'm streaming Zoom on Facebook. So I want both Dr. Gabila and Dr. Ogoji to know that we are actually also live on Facebook, not just on Zoom. You know, and it works. So I tried it and it worked. So I'm happy. I'm happy about that. But one thing, a question, and Dr. Gabila, I'm going to ask you, then I'll ask Dr. Ogoji. But I want everybody to, so at the top of the hour, I need you to interrupt whoever is speaking so that I can make the announcement and go back. To you, Dr. Gabila, since you live in, I'll call it the heat zone because it's hot there right now, how has the Continental Free Trade Agreement affected the immigrants in South Africa? The reason why I say that is there are some people who think this xenophobia is actually engineered by the West or foreigners, not from within, to dampen and lower the momentum of this Continental Free Trade Agreement, because our leaders have finally come together. We've gotten the minimum requirement plus more, thanks to Gambia, which was the 22nd country to ratify that agreement. And we are heading to the point where when you're an African, you can live on any part of the continent and work in any part of the continent. Now we heard what Dr. Ogoji said about, intra-tribal, intra-nation, black on black crime. It's happening in Cameroon. It's been going on. I believe it happens in, if not all the African countries, all the 55 plus countries. It's happening. Not all of them are being reported. So do you think, I'm not asking you to speculate, but these are some thoughts, some mindsets that, because the timing of these xenophobic activities, it is not a coincidence. We just now are trying telling the world that we are coming together. There are efforts being made even by our organization to bring all Black people around the world together. And now whoever is behind it, they are trying to frighten, to put fear in us that we look at, we haven't even started living freely around the continent. Look at what is happening now. Then, it is a shame. And Dr. Ogoji, I also want you to weigh in on that. But my thing is, as you guys are weighing in, I want you guys to think of the fact that historically we have been known not to like each other, Black people, whether on the continent or in this country. Dr. Ogoji was talking about African Americans. The African Americans may not like us, but we Africans, most of us, not all of them, don't like them either. I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are familiar with the term Akata, which is a derogatory term that Africans call our brothers and sisters here, and it really needs to stop. From what I understand, I may be wrong. I was told that Akata meant katakata, and it was coined from Nigeria. I'm not sure, but I want to plead with all my brothers and sisters: stop calling our brothers and sisters here Akata. They are our brothers and sisters. They came from Africa, and it's all this black on black crime thing that even allowed slave trade to be possible in the first place, because those people were taken against their wish. So I don't know, maybe Dr. Gabila, you can hold on until after the top of the hour. Dr. Ogoji, you have 5 minutes to respond to my questions, and then I'll come back at the top of the hour to give some announcements, and then we'll go back to Dr. Gabila. Over to you, Dr. Ogoji.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised that there are some external forces outside Africa that are pushing this issue of xenophobia. At this point in time when we're coming together, I will not be surprised. Yeah. That's one. And number two, I mean, you're quite right. Akata is a type of, it's a negative term for our fellow brothers here in America, call them Akata because we don't like them. Put it that way. We may not come out openly and say X, Y, and Z. So, but I will say one thing about life, okay? Until our leadership, our leadership, solve the problem of hunger, good roads, basic health care, African Union, it's always be an illusion. Why am I saying this? If everybody in South Africa can graduate, if majority, not everybody, at least 80% of South African can graduate and find a job, okay? Even if they despise the immigrant, there will be very minority of people that will despise that. And same with Nigeria, same with other countries of the world. So if you cannot solve the problem of bad leadership that causes hunger, then issue of hate cannot be solved. I went for a program just last week. It was a program where you see cars. We call it demolition derby. It's just a crazy sport. I was the only Black man there with my kids, And I can say, what's going on here? It's a game for people who have, in quote, who have enough to eat and drink. They want to go and wash cars. You know what I'm trying to say? So Africa, until we solve the hunger problem, which is a leadership problem, so that people can have 3 square meals, people can guarantee good health care, and then punish all those thieves that steal our money and bring out of the country, every other thing we're doing is it's very unlikely to succeed. That's how I look at it. That's my take on that. So leadership, failure of basic necessity, hunger, poverty, no health care, and then making people blame other people for their problem. And religion, I'm not saying, again, God forgive me, religion in Africa is also a crime. The African leaders, religion say, they preach about immediate wealth, and they don't preach about job and things like that. So some of those things they do make people believe that if you are not successful, if you can't feed yourself, then your brother is causing it. Within villages, in my village, for instance, one pastor said, every rich man is using the poor people to make money. Instead of preaching good habits, go to work on time, create job. If you work, you eat. You don't work, you don't eat. So those are so work and eat should go together, not just miraculous wealth. There's no place of miraculous wealth in the Bible.
Dr. Godri, thank you so much. I want to say something. I want to respectfully, disagree with you on one point. The point about the leadership solving the problems before this issue of black crime will go away. The reason I want to say that is our leaders have failed us for centuries. So we can no longer wait on the leadership. We have to do something. Private citizens have to do something. Dr. Ogoji, I was privileged to be in the workshop during the Africa's Brain Bank workshop, where you are a physician, but you had a solution to solve the hunger problem. And that was the fishery you were talking about. You are not saying that, oh, you're waiting for the Nigerian government to do it or the Cameroon government, because you are both a Cameroonian and a Nigerian. You were going, this is something that you as an individual want to do. So we need to encourage our brothers and sisters. We need to take little steps, okay, to do this thing. Let's not wait for the government. It is true that a hungry man is an angry man. That's true. For when we're growing up, we heard that Cameroon, there was never a civil war in Cameroon because there was always food. But now there's genocide, What happened to the food? And people are no longer going to the farm. Most people are on social media. Young girls and boys don't want to work farm. They don't want to go to the farm. So that element of hunger is there. So, but let's change our mindset, and to me, let's just forget that there's a government, and let's do it ourselves. But we're at the top of the hour.
Yes, I was going to tell you that we change our mindset and change the topic and go to announcements first. Then we'll come back to the topic. Thank you.
Yes, so since we're at the top of the hour, I'm going to give you announcements, and then Dr. Gabila will get a chance to respond to my question.
Yes.
Yeah, starting tomorrow, we're going to be talking about pain. Okay, and hopefully an African will be able to come up, or a black person will be able to develop a peanometer, because we all know there's nothing to measure pain. It's subjective. You go to the doctor, they say from a scale to 1 to 10, how much is the pain? How bad is the pain? I've had the privilege of doing a lot of medical missions since 2003 on the continent, especially in Nigeria. You will not believe how pain is being managed on the continent. People go and have surgery, they give them Tylenol. It doesn't even make sense to me. At least give them ibuprofen. What is Tylenol going to do for a post-op patient? There are a lot of patients that have surgery without even anesthesia. So yes, pain may be a symptom of something more serious, but it's a problem. Not only on the continent, there's a problem of pain here. There's a pain epidemic in this country. The mismanagement of pain. There's opioid crisis, which, if you don't, all you have to do is Google, you'll see how many medical professionals are being arrested because of this pain thing. Now CBD oil has come out. So we're going to be talking about pain and also how to manage it this week coming. We have a lot of Africans that are used to enduring pain. Nobody should have to endure pain. I personally, I suffered with fibroids for decades. I had 3 surgeries. You know, the fibrotic pain is ridiculous. It's almost like having a baby every time it comes on. Very bad. So we're going to be talking about different kinds of pain, and I'm so glad our point physician, Dr. Ogoji, is on this call, because he's going to be on the show next week talking about pain management and how to manage pain. But I want to take this a second just to play to our people. You don't have to endure it. Please. God did not create us to suffer and live in pain. Please. You do not have to just suffer or have man for do or just manage it. No, it's not acceptable. You should not be in pain. There's relief out there. There are even local remedies that our people use both on the continent and here for pain. You know, I met a young man in North Carolina, July ending, that has a product, and it says therapeutic cream. The cream happens to, you know, relieve pains. I'm not endorsing it or anything, but I'm just saying that our people, you know, have solutions. Let's share that solution. Home remedy, there are other non-home remedies out there from the pharmaceutical industry. You know, even though Tylenol takes care of pain, it doesn't take care of inflammatory kinds of pain, and it damages your liver. So we're going to be talking about those things to educate our people, you know, especially those on the continent. But you'll be surprised, even our African people here, they think it's okay to live in pain. You know, somebody once made a statement that some people get so used to poverty, they think it's a blessing. And some people have gotten so used to living in pain, they think it's normal, and it's not normal, you know. And then I also want to encourage everybody. We have a book out there called Africa's Brain Power, the editorials of the best in the business, our chief executive editor, Mr. Asonglefac Nkemleke. It's on Amazon. You know, we encourage everybody. It's also on our Facebook page. You know, encourage you to get a copy. That's a good gift. You know, it's a masterpiece. You know, you can't miss it. So, Dr. Gabila, I'm going to hand over to you to take the calls, the question.
Okay, thanks so much, ma'am. Well, one of my research areas is in the issues of regional economic integration and political integration. And so I've been doing some work. I've actually written a number of papers in the continental free trade area. I've looked at African integration. I've looked at European integration.
Yes, did we lose you? Dr. Gabila, are you still with us? Reverend Palm, apparently we lost him, or maybe
no, we have not
lost different.
We have not
okay. Yeah.
Because
I'm not hearing him again. I'm not hearing him anymore.
Yeah, I mean, he's there, but let me check.
Yes. Anyway, while you check, it must be said that this Africa black on black violence or whatever, it's a disgraceful thing, because we are supposed to be brothers. We are supposed to be one. We are supposed to accept one another. And when Dr. Ogoji mentioned what is going on in Nigeria in particular, between the races, between the tribes rather, not the races, it touched me, because those are my neighbors. And I find it difficult to accept that one tribe will not want to see the other tribe. I know it's happening everywhere. It's happening in Cameroon. I mean, from the day somebody said the English-speaking will be afraid, they should go back to wherever they came from. That's the language which I hear this day, and which hurts me a lot from the current leader of the most powerful country in the world. But then we don't have to do that on our brothers. Tribe is not what should guide us. Coming together is the beginning of solving our problems, living together, accepting one another, avoiding stereotyping each other, avoiding using derogatory statements on each other. Those are the things we should seek to bring into our life, because we cannot build any union, whether perfect or imperfect. We cannot do anything if we continue to say, oh, you are Bangwa, you are Basa, you are Wondo, you are Iton, this and that. We don't have to use those things. We accept one another as they are, because God made all of us. The same blood runs in our veins, and we should learn to accept one another as we are, because if we don't, we will continue fighting. When the colonial master came, one of the things they held up high was that we were fighting intertribal wars. We were killing one another. But they ended up killing more of us than we killed before they came, and even after they came. How many of our brothers and sisters did they kidnap and take into slavery? They don't call it kidnapping. They never called it because they wrote the history books. Today, they are still doing it. They are punishing us. They are doing everything to make sure that anything that we're trying to do good, they turn it around and make us instead point fingers at our fellow brothers and sisters and tend to kill them. This has to stop, and it can only stop if we, as the Reverend Pam was saying before, change our mindset, change our way of thinking, and accept one another as our fellow brother or sister. Reverend Pam, have you been able to figure out what is wrong with the link with Dr. Gabila?
I think we just lost him. He should, maybe it's internet unreliability.
Connection.
Africa, maybe connection. So, but we have Dr. Ogoji. I'm sure he's going to dial in because he's done some work again.
Yes, on that.
This area, so we definitely need to hear from him. So let's hear from Dr. Ogoji.
Dr. Ogoji, please, over to you.
Well, I mean, black on black phobia, or black doesn't like black, as I said before, it's a very shameful thing. We can, from individual standpoint, make things better. We can find a way to reorganize ourselves, and so that we can empower ourselves to take care of our basic needs, irrespective of the government. We have to do this from education standpoint of view. So start teaching our children and the younger generation how to tolerate one another. A typical example of what diversity is supposed to be, or multi-tribalism or diversity is supposed to be an asset, not a curse. Because if we look at around and look at even the European countries where they're developing, most of them accepted blacks in quote, are far more advanced than those who remain homogeneous. And that shows the strength in diversity and multicultural or multi-tribalism, living as one and as one in the same place. I like to refer to the French national team that won the World Cup recently. Among those 22 players in that team, those players were all from more than 20 different African countries, and they won the World Cup. So that means the French people took advantage of accepting those black boys in their team to make a record.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, you look at other teams which are completely pure whites, you know, I'm sure putting one or two black players there will have made a difference. So there's always unity in diversity, and there's nothing like loving oneself. So if we love ourselves, we're going to take care of things that we need, and then we can take care of our brothers and be our brother's keeper. So it's unfortunate that what's going on in the continent is not right. Even here in diaspora,
yes,
it will surprise you how people will say, you see the Kenyans will complain about the Nigerians, the Nigerians complain about the other tribes. And I mean, to be fair, to be more specific, okay, Nigerians in particular are always accused of most of the crimes they have outside the country, which is not a lie, but the way I think to respond to such things is, if you look at the population of Nigeria as a whole, if there are 10,000 Nigerians in America, and there might be only 1,000 Cameroonians and 1,000 Kenyans and 1,000 Ghanaians. Among 10,000 Nigerians, if 8,000 is doing well and 2,000 is committing a crime, that surprised the total population of all other smaller African countries. So don't crucify the country. You deal with the individual committing a crime, because the more the population, there's more advanced people doing things. And it surprise you how many Africans are in a very good positions in this part of the world doing things. Nobody mentioned about them. They only mention about the criminals and the 419 and all the criminals. but that does not define us. What defines us is what we do in the positive part of life, and then we condemn what the people that give us bad image, irrespective of their country of origin and what they do. That's my take on this.
Well, Dr. Ogoji, Niason, real quick, what you're saying is so profound. There is somebody who said, this is not from me originally, but on TBN, he said, bad news goes around the block 3 times before good news puts on its shoes. What you're saying is so true. How many times are you going to hear anybody showcasing Africans? Rarely, February is Black History Month, and February is the shortest month of the year. Even in that February, you would rarely come across the media showcasing Africans. You will not. Like you say, you're right. The percentage of Nigerians that commit crime is minuscule compared to other countries, but you will not hear it. You will not. There are people that have assumed that I was a Nigerian. Even my first day in this country, I walked into a classroom, somebody was speaking, I think it was Yoruba to me. People just assume that you are from Nigeria. But I'll go, a lot of them think I'm from your area, I'm Igbo. But what I'm saying is that we need to debunk that, and it's up to us Africans to write our own stories and tell our own stories. If we don't tell our stories, nobody's gonna say it. Nobody. Don't count on the yellow or the white people to tell our stories. We have to tell our own stories. And these are the kind of things we are trying to showcase on Africa Online. We need, and other organizations that we are involved in. We need to tell our own stories. If somebody said, if you want to kill a Black person, just get another Black person to do it. And that's the truth. That's the truth. But it doesn't make sense, because you are supposed to even be emotionally attached to this person. Because as a Black person, we have some commonality. It should be difficult for you to hurt your own brother or sister. But for some reason with our people, maybe I'll call it self-hate, slave mentality, because our people are the one race on this earth that don't like each other, that harm each other more than other people. I'm not saying that other races don't hurt each other, but our people, we hurt each other more than any other race. Niason.
Yeah, thank you very much, Reverend Pam. And it's unfortunate we lost Dr. Gabila. I hope you'll be able to dial back. But continuing the conversation, now, Dr. Ogoji, we've talked so much about education being the key to helping us solve this problem. But how do we go about? There is no school of that teaches racial relations. Maybe certain schools may have African this and that, but then back on the continent, do we as a continent, do we as countries on the continent teach how to accept one another as coming from another country?
That's a very good question, and unfortunately we don't. I remember learning about World War I, World War II, Franklin Roosevelt, with Woodrow Wilson, Hitler, and the future about Africa was how Mungo Park founded River Niger, and how Columbus came, all those crazy stories that does not make sense to me.
Exactly. Because
River Niger has been there before Mungo Park came there. We know it was there, so how did he find it? Yeah. Yet nobody teaches us about things like origin of Africa, how nobody talks about slave trade. It was never taught in my history book. I studied in Cameroon during my formative years. Nobody taught me about the history of Cameroon itself, how it started. Nobody tells me about slave trade. Nobody tells me about what led to even this, what's going on in Cameroon now, the English-French problem. It was never taught.
Yes.
The government song, we were one. I remember that song. We were one, and the white man came with a big sense, and the bandits came around. They came in number. That's all I remember. Right. But the referendum that took place in 1961 and all these things, I didn't know. I know about Cameroon history now in the past 3-4 years in the country started. It will surprise you, but I'm schooled in that place. Go back to Nigeria and nobody talk about the Biafra War and all what happened in Nigeria in those years. They talk about World War I, World War II. We are cheating ourselves. We need to wake up and talk about ourselves.
And Dr. Ogoji, that, not cutting you short, that reminds me of a conversation I had yesterday with two French-speaking Cameroonians, or three of them. I mean, they were husband and wife, so there were four of them actually. They did not know that the name Limbe is not an indigenous word, Limbe, L-I-M-B-E. That is the name of a German. He lived there. He was called Mr. Limburg. And he was taking care of this river that runs through the town, this stream that runs through the town. I was present in the early 1980s when a minister of territorial administration, he was called Ayisim Vodo, came to Buea and wanted the name changed. Well, he said that the president wanted foreign names to be changed. So they got into this meeting at the governor's office. I was the interpreter because the minister did not speak English. He spoke only French and did not understand a single word of English. So he wanted me to be his interpreter. And I was telling them whenever somebody spoke. And the late Dr. Ndele, may his soul rest in peace, said after 30 minutes of discussion, the minister had to leave, said, okay, they need to do something. They need to give him a name. Late Dr. Ndele said, well, there's a stream that runs through the town. If you want to call it Limbe, but know that that was a German's name. He did not even care, the minister did not even care to find out what German that was. But he said, okay, dans deux semaines, si on n'a pas le nom, on va adopter le nom Limbe. So that is saying, if in 2 weeks they don't give a different name, they will call the city of Victoria Limbe. And in 2 weeks, the decree came out, Victoria became Limbe. Personally, I grew up there from 1965, so I know the town as Victoria. So very often I call it more Victoria than Limbe. All the same, it was a question of history. My French-speaking persons with whom I was talking yesterday did not know the story of how the name change came. They thought it had always been Limbe. I said, no. This came in the 1980s when the last days of Ahijo's stay in power in Cameroon. The same thing with Fort Furo, which became Kuseri. This was changed at the same time. So African history by Africans does not exist because the few people who have written it with their own slant, and it is not accepted as textbooks in our schools, unfortunately. So Africans need to step up and teach their own history. Yes, Reverend Pam.
Let me just tell you something. Thank you for that history lesson. Let me tell you, me sitting here, I wasn't just Dr. Ogoji. When Limbe was being changed, or Victoria was being changed to Limbe, the information I got was that they were changing it because Victoria was an English name, a foreign name, and Limbe was a local name or an indigenous name. That river was called Limbe. I'm hearing this from you for the first time on this show, that it was, and I'm glad you were there interpreting. So we are hearing it from the horse's own mouth. Not that I'm calling you a horse, but you were an eyewitness to this mess.
I was an eyewitness, eyewitness.
And hopefully the indigents of, I don't know what to call it, Victoria or Limbe, they will come up with a name, a local name, a name that's indigenous to the people of that area. But this is, and this is exactly what we are talking about, distorting history, you know?
Reverend Pam, not to cut you short. Not to cut you short. You'll get back on that. The fact is, Dr. Ndele said that there was no good pronounceable name for the city of Victoria because the mountain Bakwaris had a name for it which was pejorative. So they didn't want that. And then he brought up this idea of the stream running around the place, and that was the name that was adopted. So there may be no indigenous name as such, because in those days...
No, the indigenous need to give the name. It goes back to the self-hate and lack of what? Self-what? Okay, they are saying that there was no pronounceable name or whatever. So how come a German's name is easier to pronounce than a name of...
That's a question. That's a question.
People think everything white is superior, and that is changing. And our ambassador, Her Excellency Dr. Akanako, did an excellent, phenomenal job during the Africa's Brain Bank launch to wake people up to the Berlin Conference. We have studied European history, but how many people remembered or even understood the ramification? I don't remember my history teacher teaching me the ramifications of that Berlin Conference. You know, and I went to an Ivy League school. So how many Africans were taught the ramifications. You know, it is a rude awakening for us. It's our time, it's our turn. Things are changing. You know, they need to pronounce our name. When Schwarzenegger was acting, they could pronounce his name. That name is not pronounceable. You know, most of our African names are 1-2 syllable, and people want to murder our names. Don't let them abbreviate your name. They need to call you with your. I don't let anybody call me with just a letter or change my name. They must learn how to pronounce my name. If you cannot pronounce my name, I don't need to do business with you. You are not entitled to my intellectual capital or my intellectual property. You have to say my name. If
that's right.
They know your what, they will say your name.
And as an eyewitness again, back in the days of Radio Cameroon, my days in Radio Cameroon, when I just started and we're doing this 6, 7, 8 news, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, a director of the radio came one morning and said, "Mais Monsieur Jean-Claude Otou, qui est ce journaliste avec un nom kilométrique?" Was asking, who is this journalist with such a long name? And Jean-Claude Otou, being the funny guy that he was always with us in the radio, said, "Mais Monsieur Directeur, il est devant vous." So I was sitting right in front of him, and he turned to me and said, "Mais c'est vous un coutume comme ça avec un nom si long? Are you the short man like this with such a long name?" I just smiled and said, "Yeah, yeah." I just smiled.
God.
Yeah.
Oh my
He
God!
He said, "Was there no way to cut short my name?" I said, "No. My father, when he gave birth to me, gave me the name Asonglefac, and my father's name is Nkemleke. There's no way to cut any of that." And he walked out because, I mean, so there's a lot of history that I can recount on my experiences in my first life. So we need us.
Dr. Gabila is back, please.
Good. Okay.
Minutes.
Yeah, Dr. Gabila, before we lost him, was telling us that he did some research or he did some work on some of these things that we're talking about. So, Reverend Pa, maybe you recall better than I do. Remind him of where we were.
The Continental Free Trade Agreement, you know. I
mean,
yes.
On
the Continental Free Trade Agreement, and so I would like to just suggest that we give him the remaining 6 minutes. You know, we don't need to take a round.
Yes. Yeah, then we'll just be able to have our last words at the end. So, Dr. Gabila, over to you.
Oh, Lord. Dr. Gabila?
He may be back, but the video may not be. The video may be there, but the sound.
Audio. Okay, there
the audio,
yeah. No, he's there. We can't hear you.
Okay.
Can you turn your audio on? I see his video, but his audio is not on.
Yes.
I'm back.
Okay, he's back.
Oh, welcome back. Welcome back. Yes.
Sorry, I got kicked out.
Okay. The remaining 5 minutes is yours to take over from where you left off.
Okay, very briefly, I just wanted to say that our people from the rest of the world should understand integration as a process. The reaction of Nigeria to the xenophobic attacks in South Africa, it's an indication of what integration could be. Because of the depth of the business relationships between the two countries, then issues of migration are given a different political attention. So the Continental Free Trade Area is a statement of intent. It's in, like with all free trade areas, it seeks to make free movement of goods, free movement of services and capital and people. And with all integration arrangements around the world, business usually precedes movement of labor. And so it would happen in stages. It would happen in stages. I think the emphasis of the Continental Free Trade Area at the moment, it's the free movement of goods. There will be liberalization of issues of services and issues of investment will follow, and ultimately will get to be a market where the intensity of business is so high such that barriers to movement would be an impediment to actual flow of trade and business. Before economies get to that level, just legislating free movement of people is usually a big challenge. So hopefully, as the markets open up and the intensity of trade broadens, the need for Africans to travel to other African countries to do business is going to also drive the migration agenda. And so seen from that perspective, I would be hesitant to draw a parallel between the ongoing xenophobic attacks and the CFTA that was created. I don't think they're external forces. I think that these are internal domestic challenges that have just been mismanaged from a leadership perspective. I don't think there's any foreign hand in this, contrary to what some people may want to think.
Okay.
This is just us. I think this is just us growing up and dealing with our challenges of overcoming the weaknesses of our economies.
But look at the timing. Is the timing not suspicious? I mean, it's not today that Nigerians started going to South Africa. I know we're growing up during apartheid. A lot of African countries, well, I don't think any of them went there. Our passports were valid everywhere except South Africa. So once apartheid was abolished, you know, that ended. But the timing, I don't think it's a coincidence, you know.
I think the timing is well, if you want to think that this is like the fourth or fifth xenophobic outbreak in the last 5 years, then you may not want to read too much into the current timing. That's on the one hand. And if you go into the substance of what the CFTA is and means to do, you're going to realize that we are still at the very early phases of the kind of integration that we aspire for as a continent. We're still in very early days for anybody to even want to think of sabotaging it.
But it's a milestone. Oh, no. People are already thinking, because there are even people in Europe, I'm not going to mention their name, everybody can Google it, that have warned, you know, African leaders that it was not going to work. So it's not that people are thinking, there are people that are working on sabotaging it, but it's not up to them. African leaders have woken up and they are talking to each other now. Yeah.
No, there's a good dynamism in the continent that is really indicative of where the future is going to lie, which is very positive.
Okay, Dr. Gabila, your last word on the topic we've been discussing, because we are running up to 29 minutes after 5 o'clock our time here. I know you should be late night in South Africa. Your last word on black on black or Afrophobia.
I think that the information age with social media presents us a huge opportunity to hold each other accountable. I want to salute the Africa diaspora and the African continent and our people all over the world for responding forcefully the way they did with the recent outbreak. We want all of you guys to know that as Africans and as migrants in South Africa, we really appreciate the sense of concern and love and care. And also the outcry is a demonstration from the rest of Africans that we are saying this is not who we are. This is not what we are about. And the rest of Africans to tell our South African brothers that we do understand that you have challenges, but this is not the way to go about dealing with those challenges. And I think that we need to push this conversation to a higher level where we transition from just telling them stop hating on African brothers, and we start telling them that these same African brothers are your best bet out of the challenges that you are facing, because that is the reality of what it is. I'm as a lecturer, I go into the villages to go and tutor and mentor South African students, something which my European or my white, for lack of a better word, migrant counterpart would feel intimidated to do. But when I go into those communities, I don't feel intimidated. I just see I see another village context. I relate to it, but I have and so many people like me carry the kind of skill set that is globally competitive. I could up and leave and go and stay anywhere else in the world, and they would not get an Australian or a German to come and go into that village community and do what I'm prepared to do. So they need to be brought to understand that we are here to add value. We are their best bet out of the challenges that they are facing. So they should start seeing us in a positive light instead of seeing us as threats, because we really are not threats. We are one people.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, Dr. Gabila, thank you so very much. And we look forward to being with you every Sunday on the program, no matter the topic. Next week is pain. Dr. Ogoji, your last word in a few words.
Yes, on time.
Yes, time. Okay, Reverend Pam, your last word, and we'll close the program.
Just love yourself, that's all. Love black
Thank
people,
you so
love
much.
Each other. We are running out of time.
Thank you so much. It has been Africa Online, Divine Chamokong, Reverend Pam Fomunung, Dr. Ogoji, Dr. Gabila. We thank you all next week. Bye-bye for now.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks.